I was told. You're not welcome at this wedding, you embarrass us! By my sister. I said. Great, then I'm not paying for it. The next morning her fiancé called me screaming. The morning she got engaged, I cried. Not in the dramatic, sentimental way you see in movies, but in the quiet, private kind of way, sitting alone in my truck, wiping my face with the back of a grease-stained hand after my shift. It wasn't about her getting married. It was everything leading up to that moment. All the birthdays I paid for, the broken-down cars I helped tow, the apartment rent I covered when her ex walked out. All of it. After our parents died, car crash, icy road, both gone in an instant, my little sister, Hannah, was all I had left. She was only 14 at the time. I was 23, already out working with my hands, trying to build up my garage into something real. Raising her wasn't something I was prepared for, but life doesn't ask you what you're ready for. It just throws it at you and watches what you do next. So when she called me after the proposal and said, "Jake, I want you to walk me down the aisle," I nearly broke. I felt like I'd done right by her. She'd met this guy, Brandon. Seemed decent enough. Worked in finance, always wore a suit even on Sundays. I didn't get it, but hey, if he made her happy. I told her I'd cover the wedding. All of it. Venue, flowers, dress, catering, band, even the honeymoon. Consider it my gift, I said. You only get one shot at your big day. I want it to be perfect. She hugged me so tight, I remember thinking, for a moment, I hadn't lost my whole family after all. But if I'd known what she was going to say to me a week before the wedding, I never would have opened my wallet, let alone my heart. Because that's when it started unraveling. The first thread? A whisper I wasn't meant to hear. It was the Tuesday before the wedding. I stopped by the venue after work, mud still on my boots, to drop off the final deposit check. Hannah wasn't expecting me. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe catch a glimpse of the rehearsal decor she'd been raving about. The lobby was quiet, just the faint sound of laughter echoing down one of the side halls. I followed it without thinking, familiar voices tugging me forward. I turned the corner, then stopped when I heard my name. "He's sweet, but he doesn't belong here," said a voice I recognized as Brandon's mother, Elaine. She always had this wine-soaked drawl, like everything she said needed to sound important. "He owns a garage, Hannah. A garage. With oil stains and rust and God knows what else." Then I heard Hannah's laugh. Soft at first. Then bolder. I know, she said. "But he's footing the bill." What was I supposed to do, tell him no? My stomach dropped. Elaine clucked her tongue. "Well, at least make sure he doesn't speak at the wedding. Or dance. Honestly, we might want to seat him somewhere near the back. It's your day, darling. You don't want a photo album full of overalls." Then more laughter. Hers and Brandon's. My sister. My only family. I don't remember walking away, just that I ended up back in my truck, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. I didn't cry this time. I just sat there, letting the truth settle over me like dust on old tools. I embarrassed them. I wasn't part of their shiny little picture. And I'd paid for the whole frame. The confrontation happened 2 days later, in her kitchen. She was standing by the island, scrolling through her phone with one perfectly manicured hand while sipping iced coffee with the other. She looked relaxed. Happy. Like a woman who just handed her life over to a Pinterest board and was watching it come to life. "Hannah," I said quietly. She looked up. "Hey, Jake. What's up?" I didn't dance around it. "I was at the venue Tuesday. I heard what you said. About me. About how I don't belong." She blinked, hesitated just long enough for the truth to twist in her face. Then she exhaled like I was the one making things hard. "Oh. That? That?" I repeated. "Look, I didn't mean for you to hear it." She put the glass down. "It's just, you wouldn't understand. Brandon's family is, well, they're very particular about how things look. It's a big event. There's a certain image they're expecting." I stared at her. "So I'm an embarrassment." She didn't answer, just picked at the edge of a coaster, avoiding my eyes. You could have said it to my face. She finally looked up then, and when she did, there was something cold behind her voice. Like steel beneath velvet. You've always been good to me, Jake. And I'll never forget that. But this wedding, it's not about you. And honestly, maybe it's best if you just didn't come. It would make things easier. You're not really welcome. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. Didn't throw my coffee mug or slam a door. I just nodded. Got it, I said. Then I reached into my jacket, pulled out the envelope with the final checks, the florist, the caterer, the band, the honeymoon travel agent, and dropped it on the counter. Great, I added calmly. Then I'm not paying for it. And I walked out. I didn't even look back to see her reaction. I woke up to my phone ringing at 6:17 a.m. the next morning. The name flashing across the screen was Brandon. Not Hannah. Brandon. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it rang again. Same name. Same panic behind the digital glow. I finally answered on the third call, mostly because I was curious how fast their perfect world was falling apart. The second I picked up, he was yelling. What the hell, Jake? What did you do? I yawned into the receiver. Morning to you too, Brandon. You canceled the payments? The venue just called. They said the final invoice bounced. The caterer's threatening to pull out. The honeymoon booking was rejected. Do you know how bad this looks? Looks? I said slowly. I thought I wasn't invited. Surely someone else can cover it now that I'm such an embarrassment. There was silence on the line, but I could hear him breathing like he just sprinted upstairs. You can't do this, he said, quieter now. We're getting married in 3 days. Everything's already planned. You agreed. And then I was uninvited. I cut in. Pretty clearly. But Hannah said. He stopped himself. Wrong thing to say. Wrong audience. Yeah. Hannah said. I replied. And now I've said something too. He started sputtering, trying to negotiate, to backpedal, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was already pulling up the family group chat on my phone. This wasn't just about money. It hadn't been for a while. It was about how easy it was for them to take what they wanted from me, and still act like I was something to be ashamed of. It was about making sure everyone saw what was really happening. I didn't type anything dramatic in the group chat. No angry paragraphs. No guilt trips. Just 2 screenshots. One was Hannah's message from earlier in the week. It's not about you, Jake. You don't belong at this kind of wedding. It's not personal, it's just better this way. The second was my reply. Great. Then I'm not paying for it. I posted them without a caption. Just let the receipts speak for themselves. The group chat had about 20 people in it. Cousins, uncles, aunts, a few of my mom's old friends who never left even after she passed. I muted the thread and set my phone down. Didn't even watch it erupt. Instead, I poured myself a cup of coffee, turned on the radio in the garage, and got back to work. Oil change on an old Civic. Straightforward. Clean, honest labor. But curiosity got the better of me after lunch. When I opened the thread again, it was chaos. Is this real? Why would she say that to him? After everything Jake's done for her? I can't believe this. And then came the texts privately. From Aunt Mel, who always baked my favorite apple pie. From Uncle Rob, who'd helped me set up the garage's first hydraulic lift. Even from cousins I hadn't heard from in years. All of them saying the same thing in different ways. You didn't deserve that. I didn't reply to most of them. Just sat with it. But then came the message that stopped me cold. From Brandon's mom. I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. Please let's talk? A misunderstanding. Right. The woman who didn't want me in photos. Who thought a blue-collar man didn't belong at his sister's wedding. Now she wanted a conversation? I wasn't interested in talking. I was interested in making sure this fairy tale crumbled from the inside out. I spent that afternoon on the phone. Not out of anger, not in a rage, just with the kind of calm, measured focus I get when fixing something that's been broken too long. First, the venue. I gave them my name and reservation number. The woman on the line recognized me immediately. Mr. Carter, we were just about to reach out. The final balance was due yesterday. I told her I'd like to cancel. There was a pause. Then a very careful, "You do understand there's a—" "Yes," I said. "I understand the cancellation fee. Charge it. I'll eat that. But I won't be responsible for any additional charges. That was a gift. The gift's been returned." She didn't argue. Then the caterer. Same story. Then the DJ, the florist, the shuttle company for guest transport, and finally, the honeymoon. They'd booked it all in my name. I guess they never thought I'd walk away. But I had everything: confirmations, receipts, the billing account. It took a few emails and a couple of faxes, but by dinner, nearly everything was reversed or cancelled. All of it unraveled in less than 12 hours. Hannah must have realized it was real when her wedding planner called in a panic. By that night I got a text from her, short, sharp, and full of the kind of fury only someone truly cornered could send. "What have you done? You're ruining everything." I stared at it for a long time before replying. "No, Hannah. I just stopped pretending I wasn't already ruined to make sure you got your fairy tale." She didn't text back. But others did. Guests started pulling out. Family friends canceled flights. Some of the groom's cousins backed out too. Most hadn't even met me, but the screenshots had made their way around. I didn't have to shout. I just let the facts speak louder than their fiction ever could. By Friday morning, less than 48 hours before the ceremony, everything had turned into a waiting game. I didn't go looking for updates, but they found me anyway. Apparently, Brandon's parents had shown up at Hannah's apartment that morning, furious, confused, and deeply embarrassed. Someone had sent them the screenshots, and from what I heard through a cousin who lived nearby, they'd shown up with questions and left with doubts. Doubts about the wedding. About Hannah. About who, exactly, was pulling the strings behind the scenes. It turns out, Brandon had never seen the messages either. That made me laugh. Not in a bitter way, just, man. She hadn't just lied by omission. She'd built a whole wedding on a story she knew wouldn't hold if anyone looked too close. And now that it was unraveling, she was flailing, trying to tape it all back together with excuses and panic. The biggest surprise came late that afternoon. Brandon showed up at my garage. I was under the hood of a Dodge when I saw his shiny black car pull into the gravel lot. He stepped out in slacks and loafers, clearly uncomfortable in the heat, and looked around like he wasn't sure where to go. I didn't say anything. Just wiped my hands and waited. "Jake," he said finally, walking over. "Can we talk?" I nodded once and led him to the folding chairs outside the bay. We sat in silence for a moment, the sound of a lawn mower humming somewhere down the block. "I didn't know," he said finally. "About what?" she said. "About any of it." I said nothing. "She told me you backed out last minute, no explanation. That you were flaky." He shook his head. Then I saw the texts. I could see the weight in his eyes. Not just the panic of a wedding falling apart, but the disillusionment of realizing the woman he was about to marry might not be who he thought. "I should have known," he said. "There were signs. But I didn't want to believe it." "You're not the first," I said quietly. I didn't want to believe it either. He looked at me then. "Do you think I'm making a mistake?" I let the question hang in the air. Finally I said, "I think love doesn't mean much if it needs to come with conditions. If someone asks you to cut off the people who built you up just so you can fit their image, that's not love. That's marketing." He exhaled. Long and slow. "She said you'd be the one to ruin it all." I smiled. "I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped keeping quiet." He nodded. "I don't think the wedding's going to happen." I figured. There was more silence. But this time, it wasn't tense. Just two men on different sides of the same storm, finally seeing it for what it was. Before he left, Brandon turned back once. "You were never the embarrassment, Jake. You were the only one honest about who you are." I didn't respond. Just gave him a nod and watched him drive away. And when I went back into the garage, I felt something lift off my chest. Not because I'd won, but because, for the first time in a long time, I hadn't lost myself. By Saturday morning, the day before what was supposed to be the most magical day of her life, the wedding was all but collapsed. I heard it first through the grapevine. My cousin Rachel texted me around 8 a.m. A single line. "Did you hear? It's postponed." No exclamation mark. No follow-up. Just that flat word, postponed. I didn't react. Just got up, brewed some coffee, and sat on the back porch, letting the morning sun hit my face while the rest of the neighborhood slowly came alive. Somewhere nearby, someone was mowing their lawn. A sprinkler hissed. A dog barked in the distance. It should have felt like a victory. But it didn't, not really. I wasn't celebrating the destruction of a wedding. I was sitting in the ruins of something much older. The truth is, I'd always known this day might come, just not like this. When our parents died, I stepped up not because anyone asked me to, but because someone had to. Hannah was my little sister. I loved her more than anything. She was 14 when they passed. Still a kid. I was only 23, trying to make rent on a one-bedroom and keep a fledgling auto shop alive. But I made it work. I picked her up from school. Took her to doctor appointments. Bought her prom dress. Sat through college orientation even though I'd never been to college myself. Paid her phone bill when she got laid off. Answered every 1 a.m. call. Quieted every panic. Covered every overdraft. And somehow, slowly, she began to see me not as her brother, but as her backup plan. The safety net that would always be there. Invisible. Reliable. Disposable. The wedding just made it visible. Her calls stopped after Brandon visited me. No texts, no apologies, no. I was wrong. Nothing. But I started getting texts from family again. People who used to be close with us but drifted once our parents passed. They'd seen the screenshots. They'd watched Hannah and Brandon's engagement unfold on Instagram like a Netflix trailer. And now they were watching it fall apart. Quietly, but undeniably. Some were sympathetic. Some were just nosy. A few, like Uncle Dan, offered me a backhanded, "Maybe next time just let her make her own mess." But one text stood out. From Aunt Lisa. My mom's sister. She hadn't said much when our parents died. She'd lived 2 states away and always seemed to be balancing some crisis of her own. But this time, her message hit different. "You did what a parent would have done. She just never learned to see you as one." That stuck with me. Because that's what this had always been about. Not the money. Not the wedding. It was about someone confusing love with silence. Thinking that because I never raised my voice I had none. Because I never said, "No, I never would." But this time I did. And while the caterers pulled out, the venue quietly refunded partial payments, and guests scrambled to adjust flights, I sat on my porch and watched it all unfold like a slow-motion landslide. That evening, word finally went public. Hannah posted a generic story to her social media, a soft pink background with white text that said, "Due to unforeseen circumstances, our wedding has been postponed. We appreciate your love and support during this time." No mention of why. No acknowledgement of what really happened. Just a vague, polished lie to cover the crack in the foundation. But I didn't need the world to know the full story. The people who mattered already did. And the ones who didn't? They could keep their filters and florals and unforeseen circumstances. The funny thing about chaos is that it doesn't end all at once. It simmers. Fizzles. Lingers in the background like smoke long after the fire's been put out. And in the week after the wedding that smoke clung to everyone who'd been anywhere near it. The first call I got came from Grandma Jo. She's 82, lives in a tiny ranch house with plastic-covered furniture and a rotary phone that somehow still works. She never owned a cell phone, barely understands what a screenshot is, and yet she'd seen the texts. Apparently, Rachel had printed them out and hand-delivered them like a newspaper. "Jake," Grandma Jo said, her voice small but sharp. "Is it true? Did she really say you weren't welcome?" "Yeah, Grandma. I said softly. She did. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then she said something I'll never forget. You know, your father once told me that when you grow up poor, pride becomes the only thing you can afford to give away. I'm proud of you for keeping yours. That one stuck with me. It stuck with me more than the phone calls from vendors apologizing for the confusion. More than the string of messages from Hannah's friends trying to hear my side, as if this was some reality show plot twist. Even more than Brandon's email, yes, an actual email, sent a few days after his garage visit, with the subject line, "Closure?" He told me the wedding was on hold indefinitely. He didn't say they'd broken up. Didn't say they were still together either. Just that he needed space to reevaluate the dynamics of the relationship. Which I think is finance guy speak for. I finally took the blinders off. Apparently, the group chat screenshots had made their way not just to his immediate family, but to his boss. His boss, of all people, had texted him something like, "I hope you're not marrying someone who treats her brother like that. Loyalty matters." Turns out, when your life is built on aesthetics, truth is the ugliest thing that can happen to you. Then came the family dinner. Not a formal one. Just me, my wife, and a few of the people who stood by me after everything blew up. We grilled steaks in the backyard, cracked open a few cold beers, and passed around a tray of burnt brownies that no one had the heart to criticize. Halfway through the night, Uncle Rob leaned back in his chair and said, "You know, I used to think you were too quiet. Too passive. But the way you handled this? That was a masterclass." I shrugged. "Didn't feel like one." "That's because real class never announces itself," he said, tipping his beer toward me. It was the first time in years I felt seen. Not as the guy who fixes engines. Not as the big brother with the bottomless wallet. Just as myself. Jake. A man who showed up, stood up, and finally spoke up. Hannah didn't call. Not that week. Not the week after. In fact, the only reason I knew she was still in town was because Rachel told me she saw her at Target, alone, staring blankly at a stack of returnable table runners. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of her I used to believe in. The little sister with braces and a shaky voice who clung to me at our parents' funeral like I was the last life raft. I missed the idea that love meant loyalty. But love without respect? That's just dependency in disguise. So no, I didn't miss her. But I did hope she'd learn. Not because I wanted revenge. But because she needed to grow. For herself. For whoever she ended up with next. For any chance at real love, one that didn't come with conditions or curated optics. As for me? I took the money I'd set aside for the wedding and finally did something I'd been putting off for years. I expanded the garage. Hired 2 new guys. Bought a new lift and turned the dusty old back room into a real waiting area, with a coffee machine, actual chairs, and even a vending machine that worked most of the time. It wasn't glamorous. But it was mine. And every time I walked in and saw the name, Carter Auto and Sons, above the door, even though I didn't have a son yet, I smiled. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just cleaning up after someone else's mess. I was building something no one could take from me. A few weeks later, I sat on my porch with a cold beer in one hand and the soft hum of summer settling around me. No wedding music. No speeches. Just crickets and the occasional passing car. I didn't feel bitter. I felt relieved. I'd spent so long trying to be the hero in someone else's story that I forgot I had my own to write. So if you're listening to this, wondering whether to bite your tongue to keep the peace, don't. Speak your truth. Stand your ground. And if someone tells you you're not welcome, smile. And walk away with your dignity intact. Sometimes, that's the real gift.